Frank, I just turned this on. We're live now. It's Everyman BJJ podcast. I think we're in the 46th week of the year starting today. November, what is it? Yeah, November 8th. We're already over a week into November. Past elections, mostly. Um, and there's a lot going on this planet still. The pandemic has not taken us out, but you seem to be happy, full of energy, full of life. You're seeing the glass uh, half full today. So how are you doing?
Well, I got the beanie, right? I got the little hat. It's
Yeah.
not fancy,
So,
it's like a Gap one, right? So Gap, like very basic, but we've got here in Utah, we've got some snow, right? So early snow came early, and I was walking. I told you off camera, I was walking from the cafe where I was writing. I walked 5 or 6 blocks here home, and it was a little bit of rain and snowy and like 38, 39 degrees, and it was
ooh,
amazing, man. I was just soaking it in. It was like being a child of Baltimore, growing up in Baltimore, where you have the four seasons. um, the rain and the cold are kind of sentimental to me. I have so many childhood memories playing sandlot football and just so many things, and so it's just kind of nostalgic. Anyway, yeah, you and I were also talking about things like cancel culture and some of the political things that are going on. This is not a political podcast per se, but there is a point where it's inevitable, right? It does affect so many aspects. It affects jiu-jitsu owners. I mean, politics now, with where we are in 2020, you cannot, someone like me who doesn't like to talk a lot publicly about politics, even though I covered a lot of politics as a journalist. I covered city hall, I covered state legislatures, I covered, city councils. I've been to the White House on assignment. I've interviewed governors, I've interviewed senators, I've interviewed congress people. I lived right outside of Washington, D.C., the Beltway, the nation's capital. I've worked in Washington, D.C. on M Street. I was writing political commentary in college. I worked on a gubernatorial campaign of a governor that got elected. So I've lobbied for recycling legislation, for Clean Air Act legislation amendments, and so I have been very politically conscious, very politically aware, at different times politically involved, at different times a journalist writing and chronicling things. But at this season of my life, as I was saying, so we have no choice but to talk about these things at some point, because they affect so many different particles of our life now. But on the other hand, I still try to be as apolitical as possible, because I want to love a wide spectrum of people. I don't want to get caught up in that. And also because, for my own sanity, at this season of my life, I realized how much of my life where I was angry, where I was resentful, where I was jealous, where I was a lot of things that didn't serve my higher self, that hurt me, that hurt my opportunities, that hurt relationships, that hurt my own personal fulfillment. And so I try not to get too wrapped up in it, but you can't help it at this point, because if you're a jiu-jitsu owner, let's say you're in New York City or you're wherever. I mean, let's throw out political parties. I don't identify, by the way, for the record, for about there, I do not identify with either political party. 100%. I do not. I think they're both part of two heads of the same monster. Two heads of the same monster. They serve the same masters at the end of the day. That's my opinion. That's my take. I don't buy into that dogma. I think it's the same as religious dogma myself. I think it's no different. People are treating politics as religion now. I think that's very dangerous. We are a nation of 330 million people. We have to freaking learn to get a freaking along. We have to. We cannot be the freaking divided states of America. We cannot. And that's what I love tying it into what we do here, talking about jiu-jitsu on and off the mats. I love when you go into a jiu-jitsu school or a wrestling school, nobody gives a crap what your religion is, what your sexual persuasion is, what your handy. Nobody gives a crap. They're trying to work together to make themselves better, to make you better. Nobody cares. Nobody asks. There's not a lot of gossip around it. It functions as it should. That's our job. That's what oneness is. That's what a United States is and should be. We need to start acting like it. So the notion, I find it preposterous, Noah, the notion that now suddenly, because of this election, regardless of the outcome, either way it had went, regardless, I find it preposterous that, oh, here comes the Trojan horse to save the day. Politics has been a dirty, rotten, realm for many decades in this country. And now suddenly it's going to be magically amazing and beautiful. How naive are people? How naive are they? The conditions that have been created by both parties for a long time. For a long time. The conditions we don't like in this society, there's blood on the hands of both parties. A lot. It's not, there's no savior coming in now to make a match, to magically wave a wand and life is hunky-dory and utopia is upon us. It's preposterous. And I can't imagine how people are that naive not to see it. And I don't like normally talking about this because this is how I feel deep down. I just feel like we're here, bro. Let's learn to get along. Let's learn to bring our higher selves to the table. Let's learn to treat people the way we want to be treated. And let's not ask what their religion is. Let's not ask what their sexual persuasion is. And let's not worry about their skin color. Let's get beyond the nonsense, the divisions, the divide and conquer bullcrap. Like, this whole 2020 has just been kind of gross with the tribalism, with everybody pretending they're holier than thou, that their tribe has all the answers and their tribe's going to do all these great things in the world. We should just impose their tribe's beliefs on the world. Like, nah, man. Like, I don't care. You can think a lot of different things than me. You and I think different about some very fundamental things. We get along. Why? Because there's respect. And because I understand that you care about me. You've shown that. I care about you. I deeply respect you. I care about you. It's that simple. I don't care about the boxes we check that make us different and playing this division game. And you have to agree with me, Noah, or you're a bad person. You have to agree with my main things, or you're a bad person. Shame on you for not thinking like I do.
Right.
BS. Anyway, that's my little rant. I thought you were going to rant, and here I am ranting.
Well, let me put some context on why around where my mind is on some topics, because I'm going to approach the concept of cancel culture, but let me kind of set that aside. You as a writer know that you have to set the context. You have to develop the setting first before you bring along the protagonist in your story. And so let me, if I may, spend a few minutes talking, but it's not a rant, actually. It's actually, I'm going to speak a little bit from fear, and you'll understand why as I reveal this. So if you just bear with me while I roll this out a little bit. So before I talk about cancel culture, I want to talk to you about what I've been reading or what I've been listening to lately. And I've in this time where we're not getting to interact with people in a normal sense, face to face, that's given me some downtime to actually reflect upon my own biases that I have, or things that I push away or push aside, or I neglect, or just have some kind of added preconceived notion about before I look at it. And I had looked at, I've drawn up a list going through an app on my phone that I pulled down called Libby, which I have a New York Public Library membership. Uh, I've had it for a long time since living in New York, and they have quite an extensive audiobook collection. So I've been going through, paging through there, and just putting on my wish list a bunch of different fighters, boxers, biographies, autobiographies, and one of them I had in there, which I wasn't really interested in, but I became interested in after I got to it, after I started listening to it, which is Paige Van Zandt. And I listened to her autobiography or biography during this past week, and I did not know about her background and her life narrative before this. I did not know anything about it. I'm speaking as though that you're familiar with her life story, where she was raped
I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not.
As a teenager, and her mindset. I think she was 14 when this happened, and I have a stepdaughter, and I think about this is very you look at the world differently if you have to look as a caregiver over a little girl, and you think about things, and the circumstances there in which the shame and the guilt and all of all the things going on. And then later on, just yesterday, I finished another biography by the youngest sommelier in the country, who is the 2020 Sommelier of the Year winner, and her book is called Wine Girl, and that's people, where she was working. This is Wine Girl, and they're calling her Wine Girl, and she tells a tale of being raped. And just this week, New York Times ran a story that Fred Dame, there's some accusations around Fred Dame, who is, there are allegations around his misconduct, and he is like the head of the master of the Court of Sommeliers, which is a certifying body. And so you can imagine.
Now you're talking about. Are you referencing? Is this Somalia? What is
sommelier? A sommelier is that. Okay, a sommelier in the hospitality industry works in high-end restaurants. When you sit down and they bring you the wine list and the menu, a sommelier is a food and beverage professional who has developed a high range ability, a black belt, a brown belt, black belt ability to discern the chemical compositions, the geography, the cultural, the winemaking process, everything around, to get at the perfect wine pairing, and extensive knowledge. Like over 500 estates within one territory of like Languedoc, which is a small state, in France. Just to have that amount of knowledge, it's what we would consider a brown belt, black belt level knowledge in the food and beverage industry. But I'm mentioning this because it doesn't matter the knowledge domain. What I'm talking about is there are people who are in power at the tops around these knowledge domains, and they're using their power not for good. And I'm connecting that with the vulnerability we have of those in our midst and how difficult it is for them to speak up. And because it is, there's fear of speaking up. There's fear of, there's a lot of fear around this. And you as a journalist, I'm sure you've seen victims of heinous crimes,
Well, I mean, look,
and their families.
Yeah. No one.
So,
Yeah, continue
so
your
anyways,
thought.
yeah. So the bridge to the conversation today about, when I talk about cancel culture, is I respect, I respect, um, I respect the side of the argument, which is listen to me, or listen, or how can I change inside of me to be more receptive to the warning signals? This is situational. It is a form of situational awareness of
Okay,
of
what's
of
the
harm.
question? Just for benefit of the viewer who might be a little bit confused now. What is the
Yeah.
question we're attempting? What is the question we're attempting to answer? What's the question?
How much should you shut yourself off from the the politics as opposed to the issues? And how do you remain receptive to what you care about whenever things get politicized? So
Okay,
there are merits of cancel
let's
culture.
make that a more direct question. So even go. Let's go. Let's layer that. Let's go deeper. Let's make it even more direct. The question is then, what?
So let me. I don't know if I can express it. I'm not obviously I'm not a writer, so I'm not as articulate. But I would say, inside of you, seek to find your biases. And like when you see like an accusation made, um, there's there's a few things that can happen. If you're thinking of politics of like, oh, this is just cancel culture, if you have a reflexive bent towards, oh, this is just cancel culture, and the way it's positioned versus, I what's going on here? Is there something endemic in this situation where it's hard for those who are being victimized to speak up and to affect real change? So I'll give you an example. I just saw a headline flipping through my Google News, and I saw something like Dana White made a bet with who's that? Iceman versus a security guard. He made a $5,000 bet whether Iceman could beat up what's his name, Iceman. Whether Liddell could beat up a security guard, and also was the headline written like that. And to me, that whiffs of cancel culture. I'm like, oh, that's written a certain way. And that's not in the same vein as what I'm talking about today when I mentioned the name of.
No, what does that have to do with cancel culture? That story about Chuck and the security guard.
Well, one of my initial radar, perceptions is this another hit piece on Dana White and the bro culture? Is this another? And that is like a long attack being made against bro culture.
How does cancel culture affect that, though? I mean, if that's the question, is this designed to take another dig at Dana, make Dana look bad? How is cancel culture factor into that?
Oh, well, he is an emblematic of, he has close relations to Donald Trump. He is an ardent, him, and, you think about Joe Rogan. And if you put this into like a matrix of, you have Joe Rogan, which is vilified on one side of the party because it represents bro culture. And you have to balance the politics of this versus being sensitive to Are there, do the allegations merit concern?
So are you saying
So
that are you saying that because politics has become, I mean, people are so, I would say, religious about politics now, right? Where we've reached a level of religion. It's replaced religion. I mean, people think that they're not, this is my take. People think that they're not religious. They may not be church religious or synagogue religious or go to the temple religious or whatever, or go to the mosque religious, but
uh,
people are religious about a lot of people are religious about their politics, thinking, let's just shove this down everyone else's throat. We got the right answer. Let's just shove it down everyone's throat. Kind of like religion used to do, right? When religious people were making the laws and whatever, that's what they did. This is what you're doing. And, it's because of this authority said so. Now it's just replaced it. It's science. It's a government. It's whatever. It's political groups saying we have the right answer. It's only one right answer, and it's our answer. And if you don't like it, then you're this evil person or whatever. And if you happen to have a name and be a big brand, let's create a political hit piece on you and take shots at you and sort of send the message that this is not. And so is that what you're saying is sort of a cancel culture, meaning when somebody with influence speaks up, if they don't jive with the dominant political views, then they are assailed in the media or negative headlines, and then they're attacked because they represent a threat to maybe a political movement or a political ideology. Is that what you're saying? Is that you're saying
I
cancel
think,
culture?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that I don't, you lost me a little bit because I got jumbled up in my own thoughts as you're
Yeah.
speaking. But I think you're in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Now relating this to jujitsu, um, or even to the sport of MMA, um, there's broad brushes being picked up and used to um, to label um, those in our community, of jujitsu, and I would just want to say in a more, in a public forum, um, I think, I think that we all should strive to balance, uh, the criticisms we have against cancel culture, balance that with, and this is like pretty abstract, but balance that with not letting down our guard, our situational awareness for those in our midst who may be uh, getting harmed. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's hard to say. Um,
Yeah. It's a little bit abstract for me, but I think,
and I'm not good at getting you there. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
This
this is
is
a
not
little
my
bit
strength
abstract. So
yet.
I would say that what I think some of the biggest problems we have in our country is the disparity in wealth. When almost all of the wealth is in so few hands, it becomes very easy to get your way. I mean, even if there's only two political parties, if there's only two dominant political parties that are 97, 98%, whatever it is, 95,
Yeah.
96, whatever percent of the votes, that's very dangerous. If I'm a super powerful person and I've only got two political parties that run everything, I could be in good with both of them. I can have tremendous sway. I mean, so it's a very dangerous thing. As much as I don't I don't think it's a good idea to demonize wealth. So I don't think it's a good idea to demonize wealth. I mean, we need we are a nation that's supposed to reward and incentivize ingenuity and innovation and accomplishment. So that's part of the beauty of America, is the chance to make it here, to make a living. And in a lot of places you don't have that, right? There's social mobility here, there's economic mobility. That's part of the promise of America. That's why people came by the boatloads, and people risk their lives, and people have crawled through deserts and to be here, right? It's a beacon. And so we can't really ever take away some of the financial promise around that. We should not be demonizing people that do well. I don't think we should, but we should be extremely concerned about the disparity where the wealth is in fewer and fewer and fewer hands, and it's just easy to control stuff and get your way. And that is going to, that to me makes a cancel culture even more likely. When you just have, boom, the power is in very few hands, it's very easy to be like, do as I say or else. Big consequences. It's easier to do that when the power is shared, when the resources are more shared. And I'm not sitting here taking a side. I'm not saying capitalism, socialism, communism. I'm not passing a judgment on that. But I think whether we're capitalist or we're socialist or we're whatever name we want to call it, most of us want there to be more shared resources. We want there to be a sharing of resources where there's less desperation, where the power is more divided up. It's very dangerous when the power is just in so few hands. Then what does that mean to freedom? What does that mean to cancel culture? What does that mean to, to whatever, fascism, whatever names we want to have? At some point, that can become very dangerous. We've seen that historically. So as much as I love listening to Jeff Bezos talk, I could listen to Peter Thiel, Warren Buffett. I've watched, Carlos Slim. I've watched hours and hours and hours of them speaking, many hours of them speaking. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man. I love that. So, and I respect what it takes to do what they've done. However, when we look at the landscape and we look at how many people in this country are paycheck to paycheck by the skin of their brow, like living with their parents now, 35, 36-year-old people, 40-year-old people living with their parents in numbers we haven't seen. Homelessness in almost every major city you go, rows and rows and rows and rows of homelessness that is getting so bad it encroaches upon everything. Nobody is safe from it. You can't go into a grocery store. It's the saddest thing you're going to see, and it's everywhere. And at what point do we as a society say, okay, we do need to share the resources? And I don't think that necessarily has to be government mandates. I actually don't think that. I think, it's dangerous the bigger the government gets, that's dangerous to me, to my mindset. It's dangerous to go bigger government. Like, that's dangerous. No offense to people in government. We need government. We need good governance. But it's dangerous when federal government, the largesse of federal government, it's just, again, it's the same kind of concentration of power. And that's a very dangerous thing. So we've got conditions in this country, this amazing, beautiful country, full of amazing rich people and amazing middle class and amazing people trying to make their way up. We've got a lot of potential, but we've got a place where we've been creating these broken systems and broken conditions for many decades now. Broken. And we're looking up now. We're looking at the wreckage. We're looking at the wreckage of a lot of bad policies and conditions that we've kicked the can down the road, just keep kicking it. And now it's there, and it's a big freaking mess. And a lot of these kids, I understand them being angry. They're in they're 19, they're 20, they're 21, they're 22. They don't have the same opportunities that a lot of people had in previous generations when the getting was good. When for 25 grand you could buy a house, and for whatever, 6 or 7 grand you could get yourself a nice car, and everybody could be middle class. And there was a lot of that here at different times. The American dream, to a lot of people's eyes, is fading. It's way harder. It's way more competitive. It's way more desperate. And people are pissed. And the national debt keeps going up.
But my examples weren't, you went down a path of money and wealth.
Yeah.
But my examples with respect to cancel culture were not in that, they were not down that
understand.
branch.
I understand. I'm not speaking for
can we come back to that?
Yeah.
Because I want to hear your thoughts on this. I want to bring, if I can redirect you, I want to hear your thoughts on more. I'm talking about let me put it to you this way: would you let your daughter go train jiu-jitsu? knowing the savages that are on the mat. And balance that with cancel culture, which is, well, we should just tear it all down. And how does that relate to jujitsu? How does that relate to jujitsu?
The cancel culture thing is too abstract for me, I guess, because I just think of it in terms of political, extreme political.
Yeah, it's not. It's more localized.
I'm thinking of it in a different vein, and so I'm not totally grasping that. I mean, the first part of your question, would I let my daughter? I don't have a daughter, but would I let her train jujitsu?
Theoretically,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would be. I think as a lot of parents would be, I might be a little more protective than most in the sense that I know it's a lot easier for guys to sort of hook up with women in that setting because there's a lot of barriers removed. In a normal society, you have normal space considerations. In a normal society, you meet a woman, there's a certain distance you stand from them. You're not hugging them. You're not, bringing it in. You don't, when you meet them in jiu-jitsu, you're breaking, there's a lot, people's comfortability normally, again, in jiu-jitsu, people get comfortable quicker, right? So a lot of people, like a lot of women, for guys out there that are in dating, one of the things with women, they always talk about is, I need to feel comfortable with whatever. You could be the greatest guy in the world. Women have their fears. They have their insecurities, just like we do. And they are just really selective about who gets to be comfortable, who they let themselves be comfortable with, right? They have a lot of natural walls and defenses built up because guys are always hitting on them, because guys might exploit them. Guys might just hook up with them and then ghost them, whatever goes through some people's minds. So they're big on comfort. Well, a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, there is an accelerated comfortability because you are training with someone, or you're sweating, you're even everything. I mean, your body temperature is way up and everything, and and it's about as close as you can get with another human being, short of some intimacy or some sort of thing. So it's a very unique art in that way, because most sports, if you played a woman in soccer, there wouldn't be any really close contact normally. It'd be rare, right? I mean,
right. Now we're in the space where I'm talking about. Now where I wanted to take the conversation, because there are some nuanced ethics here.
Yeah. So in any event, and there's, I mean, look, you've got, since we're talking about my daughter or a daughter,
theoretically, yeah. How would
we're talking about guys that are, a lot of times they're decent looking, they're good looking, they're taking care of their bodies, they're ripped, they're these are like some of the alphas of society. A lot of people would find them attractive. I mean, some of them are built like Adonises. Some of them are very sweet personalities, whatever. And so the risk, the thing with jiu-jitsu is the sex thing can mess up the dynamics of things. So if people are running around having sex on mats, right? So if
I'm talking about teenage,
okay,
minors. Let's deal in the space of the minors. That way,
in any event, you can start messing up the dynamics of, as far as a minor going. I don't think that, in a jiu-jitsu place, if your daughter's a minor, I'm not worried about the older guys. I don't think if your daughter's 15,
right.
I think that the vast, 99% of people on those mats are not going to try anything with your daughter, especially if you're training and I think that that's highly, highly unlikely. So I would.
And why is that? Why, in your experience, why is jiu-jitsu safe for a 15-year-old teenage girl to come in there? Why is that safe?
There are stories out there that are few and far between. The human brain, and you've read enough books, the human brain is wired so much for fear that it's disgusting. Like, if people looked at the stats on child molestation, if they looked at the stats on homicide, if they looked at the stats on everything, they are terrified of things that are improbable, that are highly, highly unlikely. And the human brain makes things like, oh my, we read a freaking headline and we assume that your community is just corrupt and evil and whatever, and everyone's going to come for our kids. And that's not realistic. You go look at the stats. I just looked at them last night. The odds of being a victim of a homicide in the United States of America, right? Because everyone's like, I could be killed if I went on the wrong date. I could be killed by the guy. And is he an axe murderer? Women screening guys, is he an axe murderer? Is he whatever? It's like, go pull the stats on homicide. It's like a 1 in 18,000 chance in any given year. You're like a 1 in 18,000 odds in any given calendar year in America that you'd be the victim of a homicide. And guess what? If you're not, using drugs and involved in other like street level shenanigans and hanging out with gangsters or whatever, your odds are way lower, way lower than that. The 1 in 18,000 is like, you got to be you got to pick like just the most homicidal boyfriend. You got to be dating gangsters, and you got to be, messing with drugs. That, if not, your odds are pretty damn low. Like the level of fear people have of that is so much higher. So it's the same with this. We see a headline or we hear things, right, about this instructor, whatever. It's so rare, but it sends off alarm bells in people to where they become almost irrational, like irrational emotion, irrational fear. And that's a very popular thing in our society. There's a lot of bad laws that get passed because of that, because people are so, I would even say, even with COVID, even though COVID's a real thing, my opinion, COVID's a real thing, 200-some thousand deaths where it's contributed to, whether or not it's the primary cause. I mean, that's, somebody can crunch those numbers, but you got 800-some thousand a year dying of cardiac disease, right? Heart disease and whatever. And nobody's bitching there's nobody bitching legislation about how much does the American diet contribute to the epidemics of cancer, of heart disease, which kill, or unforced medical errors, which kill 250,000 people a year in America by, mistakes by doctors and other medical staff, kills more than 250,000. We're just cherry picking. It's like, where's the emphasis on other things that kill people too, that have been just unnecessary, and a lot of lives, and sort of death by 1,000 cuts, right? Your diet is death by 1,000 cuts. But if you have something that kills even less people, but it's an instant, we freak out. But a lot of things in our world, people have a skewed perception. Yeah, if you're sending your son or daughter to a reputable academy, right? Not someone just who's not a legit black belt or is in the middle of nowhere and isn't an affiliate and doesn't have isn't properly belted by a legit black belt. But if you're in a legit place, it's on so many levels. It'd be suicide for a business. It's the kind of people we tend to attract tend to not be that. We tend to attract people that are hard workers, that are a little more humble. So the likelihood of that, you are dealing, I think, with a little better person, a more driven person, a more purposeful person. I think the likelihood is pretty slim, and I would feel really comfortable about putting my daughter in there. Now, when my daughter turned 19 or 20 or 21 or whatever, and you're not driving her to practice anymore, I'd be concerned. Unless she had a steady boyfriend, I would, because I think that there'd be, depending on her personality, a lot of it depends on her personality, how she carries herself. But just as a dad, you'd have this thing that's like, oh man, like you just have this thing where all those guys and all those alphas and all those Adonises, and then your daughter there, like, oh my goodness, it put a little fear in you as a parent. But
absolutely,
that's when she's 19, 20, 21, whatever.
That's right. That after she's of legal. So I think you touched on something, and I want to expand on that a little bit more of how, how many hours a day does Robert Drysdale stand on his mat, watching over everyone on the mats rolling, him or his senior staff? It's 100%.
Yeah,
There's always someone in charge.
There's cameras. there's cameras throughout probably 95% of his academy, and he's had cameras for a long time. So
Henzo's does too now. Henzo's
yeah,
has cameras downstairs looking in the. So that's one thing is there are cameras in the on the mat space, but there are also witnesses. You know, and what I'm getting at today is that when I talked earlier about that, the introspection and being aware, like if you let's get into the bro culture of I have to admit I have never heard anything inappropriate of one jujitsu student speaking about the opposite sex in the locker room or outside of the mat. You know what I'm saying? I've never, I've never experienced that. I've never experienced.
women in general, women in the jujitsu and probably wrestling too, and I even think MMA, I think that they are respected by their peers. I'm not talking about, maybe I'm not talking about salaries and things like that. That's not my domain, but in the trenches, the women are very respected because I think a lot, particularly among the men who've been training a long time in the combat sports. They have a very high level of respect for the women because we know how much harder it is for them, especially from my generation, when the women pretty much 95% of their training partners were men. And that was a lot of, that's a lot more risk on them, a lot more weight and muscle and power
Yeah.
on their limbs, on their bodies, and not every guy was nice to them. So I think that in general, there is a higher amount of respect, again, particularly from the people that are mid-level training or high level, a lot of respect for women because we know when they're training with the guys, I mean, I'm a smaller guy, right? So I'm 140 pounds and I'm training sometimes with 200 pounders, 230. I've went up to into the 300s. I've went well into the 300s in my life, right? On the mat. So I'm giving up a lot of weight, right? I'm strong for my size, but I'm giving up a lot of weight a lot of times. Most of the time on the mat, even though I trained in recent years with people that were within 20, 25, 30 pounds of me, if you add up my whole career, I'm probably most of my training sessions have been with people that are at least 20, 30, 40 pounds heavier. Very common.
Yeah.
Most of my career has been against that. And I know how challenging that can be. Now let's factor in a woman that weighs 120, 115, who's coming in there training. And you got guys, all of her training partners are not men that are 115 pounds. Doesn't work that way. She's training
Right.
with guys that are 150, 200, 220. Yeah. And even though some of those guys are being nice, she's still, I mean, if a woman is training and she's a purple belt or a brown belt or a black belt, she's paid her dues, bro. Every guy hasn't been nice to her. We want them to be, right? But every guy hasn't been nice. She's pushed her body through a lot, right?
And what
So
you mean by nice? Just to
we know
clarify
that,
that.
and we know that, and we respect that. We respect that the women have just as much fighting spirit and heart as the men. There's no drop off whatsoever. The only thing that's different a lot of times is the skeletal muscle and the muscle mass. The women, the drive to win, the fire, the fighting spirit, there's no drop off whatsoever. And I've coached female athletes and I know that, and I've never questioned that. I always knew, damn. And in fact, I would say, and I've had this conversation with other guys, a good buddy of mine, we were talking about how I would say that the average woman has a higher, not just the pain, the pregnancy thing, has a higher pain threshold. Women in general are tougher than men. They have a better pain threshold. Now, when you start getting into the elite men, like the Navy SEALs and the elite, now the guys are there with the women, right? Those guys can take a lot of pain. But if you just go and give me a class of 100 people at random, 100 women, 100 men, mid-level belts or below, you give me that, I honestly think that we can make a compelling case that the women have higher pain threshold. They're tough. And when you see that on the mat, man, you just respect it. Like you admire it. So most guys are not looking, for sure, make it, the vast majority of jiu-jitsu academies out there, totally safe for a woman. Great place for a woman. The guys are not looking to exploit the women. They're going to be coming there every day. They're not. But things do happen because it's still guy, girl, or whatever you're into, whatever your guy, girl, guy,
We're talking
guy,
about
whatever,
men and
girl,
women of legal
right,
age. But
right,
can
of
I
legal age.
jump in real quick? Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Before you get too much further, you said, something you said about bad women had bad partners, or, bad training partners. I think that what you meant to say, or what, just to elaborate on that, what you're referring to is nothing inappropriate, but more so of a man using his physical strength against a woman on the mat, as opposed to anything inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Let me
what you
say this.
meant
So
when
I had an
they're brown
experience.
belt or black belt. They've gone
Yeah.
through that fire.
A bad training partner would be somebody who was reckless or didn't have regard for your body in terms of training, in terms of using too much force. When I was in high
Okay.
school wrestling, okay, so think about this. I bet you I've rolled between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I bet you I've got, I don't know, probably over 20,000 hours of live wrestling, okay, of live wrestling or jiu-jitsu or whatever you want to call it, submission wrestling. And in all those hours, okay, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of training partners, thousands, okay? In all that, there was one time in my life as a guy that this was in high school, and it was a coach. That guy was grabby. Like, that guy was grabby in a very unusual, weird way. Like, that was not, I remember after the roll, I was like, I mean, like, I don't want to roll with him again, and I wasn't positive that was sexual in nature, his intentions. I wasn't positive because I'm out there on the mat. I'm 15 years old and I'm just thinking about winning. The guy was like 220 pounds. He was muscular. He was an assistant coach. So he was, he was a big guy. He was strong. He was
And it's from
fast. So
Penn State.
so,
We could
so
go
I'm
down that.
doing, yeah, so I'm doing everything I can to stand up,
Yeah.
to take him down, to win, to survive.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking about, but it did feel like, again, instinctively, we all kind of know, we still have our inner sense. And I came off the mat and I thought about it a little bit later that day. And I'm like, that was like weird. That guy was, really touchy feely. And like, I don't, and I don't even know if I said something to the head coach. I don't know if I did or I didn't. I don't remember rolling with that guy again. And I don't know if it was because if I conveyed something to him. I don't know. I wasn't the kind to say something to a head coach. I wasn't the type to. I don't think I did, but somehow it worked out where I didn't roll with him. I don't remember rolling with him after that. But I do remember for my whole life, think about this. I've rolled with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I remember that roll with that guy. Like, you never forget that. You never forget, like, him being, like, he wasn't, like, blatant. He wasn't, like, totally, like, grabbing whatever. But it was just, like, his hand was just, his hands were just, like, that doesn't normally happen in a roll. And I think I also was a little bit suspect about him anyway. He just kind of a little bit off. So, anyway, I've had that. And what I'm saying is, it's so rare, even for me, it is rare. It can happen. It happened to me, like, I'm pretty sure that guy's intentions, that guy was a pervert. I mean, I'm pretty sure that he was a pervert. Like, and would I have wanted if my son to train with that guy or someone like him? No, I wouldn't. Or my daughter? Heck no. Like, heck no.
Yeah.
But that was the only time that I encountered it. I'm sure I encountered other people. I hate to say I'm not the most attractive guy, but I'm okay attractive. And I'm sure there have been a few people over the years that were attracted to me in some sense. Maybe I was traded with women or whatever. It might even been men. I'm sure there are people, but nobody was grabbing on me. Everybody's very respectful of that, right? So it's like, if people are attracted to someone, like, you still know the rules of engagement. It's the furthest thing, I would say, for most people. It's the furthest thing from your mind out there. Like, it's an emptying. It doesn't fit with it. Like, it doesn't fit with our culture, like, to be thinking about that. We're thinking about, how do I get out of this position? What do I do if you do this? How do I bait you? You know, how do I get out of this spot? Where should my leg go? Where should my foot go? Wait, he had
Sure.
that grip. How do I break that grip? Right? Your brain is making all these micro
And
decisions.
imagine being a
You're not
woman
sitting there
who
thinking
has
about,
to,
like, yeah.
but imagine being a woman who has to also have that filter running of self-preservation, of not just the sport itself, but as a woman, you live with that filter on, because that's part of your makeup at that point. That's part of your being. You know what I'm saying? That's
Mm-hmm.
so tough, because here you are in that space. I I and so there's, I mean, first, what I wanted to raise with this, now that we're in this, we got here, okay? We got to the point, which is, as a where I'm at, blue belt, male, and I'm working my way up the ladder, up the mountain. As I'm walking up the mountain, and you see, you pass people along the way who stop their journey, and if I were to, or you see down and you see other people who are starting their journey, and I would tell them, the population of jujitsu practitioners who made it to blue belt and who continue on up the ladder, they're very, their health, they're focused on their health and mental health, but I also think that they're quite cerebral, because they've had to roll with, you know, opposite, opposite sex. They've had to. This is something which we discuss in our community of jujitsu practitioners: is how do you roll with the opposite sex? What is, and you have. I think that, every brown belt, every black belt has developed a sense of situational awareness, where they would not tolerate it, any kind of abuse, because that impugns their value.
Yeah, I think the caliber of person that we get in general is of a higher caliber. I also think, there's a lot of people around, and if somebody did touch someone inappropriately like that, the consequences could be immediate. Like, you're doing it in the wrong environment. I think most people know, like, the alphas will rise up there. Like, if you know that
They will protect.
they will regulate and protect
Yes.
their students, their friends, their whatever, a woman. So I think most people know,
or
like,
or
it
people of
would be,
other
yeah.
or people of
So
other backgrounds, uh,
yeah.
black,
So
indigenous, people of color,
yeah.
or gender identification or orientation. I
There
would
is
tell
no,
you,
like,
it's not like gym
racism.
culture.
Yeah. There is no race, like, that race thing is there's no, we pretty much don't have that. Like, we're like the NBA or the NFL, whatever. That's your teammate. So you don't, that's not
Mm-hmm.
a thing in our community. But, again, you'd have to be a really stupid, dumb, desperate, like, guy to come into a fight academy or a jiu-jitsu academy or a wrestling mat and be touching on somebody. It's the wrong place, and I think
Mm-hmm.
people would realize very quickly that the consequences would be swifter than a lot of other places in society. So I think that it's, now, what might be worth asking is this thing that jiu-jitsu has had, where it's been very welcoming, and it has blended the races and the religions and the different political ideologies. It lets them live together in fairly good harmony. You wonder, is that necessarily the case moving forward, because people become more and more political? You wonder if our community could become more political, mirroring the regular society. And if it became a little more tribal, I mean, right now there might be some tribalism based on my team's better than yours, but you wonder if certain, jiu-jitsu schools out there, if there would be a trend where they become more, more political. I don't know, but where maybe this good thing we're talking about is not necessarily a forever thing, right? It's not like we're guaranteed for jiu-jitsu to be a cool environment and people sharing and swapping, and even people from other different teams being communal. Hey, come train with us sometimes. And people, there is a lot of that. You go to another country, hey, stay with us, and people roll out the red carpet for you. People, if you train jiu-jitsu and you're a purple or you're a brown or a black, people trust you. People let you in their house. They trust you at their house. They trust you around their family, whatever. People are more trusting. But should we take that for granted? Should we think we're immune? I mean, I guess it's possible that we can have a lot more political stuff too if society keeps doing that. But again, what we're talking about with people on the mats and respecting each other and respecting our boundaries, we're basically talking about professionalism, right? We're talking about professionalism on the mats, right? We don't normally use that word about us because most of us, when we compete in jiu-jitsu, we're amateur, but we're talking about professionalism, which is that, even if you were at a workplace and you were attracted to somebody, that you work there, that you can get yourself in trouble, that it could affect even your work. It could affect your job there. It could affect you forever and ever. So people are normally on their best behavior. They're very professional, and that's the way to be. And I think that you're going to encounter the same thing on a jiu-jitsu mat, but with the extra burden that with the extra feature that if somebody touched somebody in the wrong way or something like that, like there could be swift consequences and repercussions. The guys there and the other women, the alphas, will rise up and protect protect anybody who's violated. So
that's the paradox of our martial arts. The paradox is you're in a much more intimate space. However, it's because of the code we live under. Whether it's a formal code of conduct like Henzo has at the front of the mat, or we're talking about the martial arts code, the unwritten code. It's not a bro culture like what some media puts out to be. I would be more concerned about my daughter going to the gym than I would a jiu-jitsu mat because of the factors we're talking about. That's the paradox in all of this. Is she's safer there in a gi or no gi training, full contact, as opposed to being in a gym, because there is no code. That's a jungle. There is no, that is, a savanna with hyenas and all kind of, stalking cats out there. So I would, and that's where I'm getting at. When you have with this political movement of cancel culture, and it comes from different perspectives, and also I'm also kind of blending in the Me Too movement, because I'm saying there's some safeguards built into the rigorous, the hardcore jiu-jitsu community. There's some safeguards built in, and it's the code of conduct that we see.
There would be no tolerance, I would say, at 99.9%. There would be, you don't even need legislation, man. There'd be no tolerance for it. People would be, remember, our art is founded, it's popularized at least by, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is Jiu-Jitsu that the Brazilians took and modified and added their innovations. And so to understand some of our code, that's in a lot of our academies, we have to understand a little bit about Brazilian culture. You've seen it there. They have, they have some vigilantism. They don't tolerate some of this nonsense. Like touching on somebody. They they're pretty swift about it, and
Yeah.
and so there's definitely like a zero tolerance. Now, when we're talking about, whatever romantic tensions, where we're talking about adults and consensual stuff, like a lot of places that can go on, right? It's not rampant, it's not epidemic, but you have consenting adults that are attracted to people and what they do off the mats. Most of us don't care. We don't sit around talking about it, but it happens, and it happens because there is an intimacy there, and there's a lot of people that are in shape and fit and whatever, and they get attached to each other, they get a bond, and so, but that is, that is of the consensual variety. If somebody wanted that, that those relationships do exist at some academies, some more than others, but that's their business, right? That's just people doing doing their thing on the side.
That's not the same as the inappropriate level stuff. There's different. Those are not even those on a Venn diagram. Those don't overlap. That's it. That's a different thing. Hey, we've got about 15 minutes left, but our conversation met my own goals here of me bringing up Paige Van Zant's story, and the Somali I refer to as, her name is Victoria James. It met that, it sated my desire to bring this up today, which is, we got to that point, which is the culture in our martial art is not a bro code. It's not a locker room banter, with misogynist, or it's not that. It's not that kind of environment. It's, I think, a very healthy environment. It's one of inclusivity. It definitely of inclusivity. Of you throw out anything, you are included in under the banner when you join. If you're on a Henzo's team or a Gracie Baja, those are the tribes that you see. It's like, oh, let's see Marcelo Garcia's no-gi champ up against, one of Danaher's monsters. That tribalism is different, but that's the beauty of being that I find. That's what is beautiful to me about jiu-jitsu is, it's a safe space to work out yourself, and a lot of those imperfections, or I would say, a lot of those things which need to be worn down, like with sandpaper. A lot of those imperfections about people get sanded down. It gets cleaned up. It gets fixed on the mats through proper modeling of behavior. I wouldn't say that every gym owner, every jiu-jitsu practitioner is a model person, but as its component, as its amalgamation, it's a wonderful thing. In the end, on the balance, it's a wonderful thing.
There is no contention. There is no contention that everyone who trains jiu-jitsu or wrestling is a good person. The only thing that we know for certain is that while they are training, while they are committed, they are almost definitely a better person than they would otherwise be. They can still have many flaws, many blemishes. I've said it many times. I mean, if I needed a mechanic, the first place I would look is in my jiu-jitsu network. I mean, I would trust that mechanic, honest mechanic, somebody with something sensitive. I'm much more inclined to trust someone that I train with or that trains. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be right, but I would be much more inclined to trust them because I know certain things about them in terms of their level of commitment. I know a little bit about their code. I have martial arts to bond with them. I just think that even if they were somebody who would shortcut somebody else, that probably, given me being a black belt in our bond, that they wouldn't. And
Yeah.
that's, I think a lot of us feel that way. I would trust the mechanic that I train with, right? I would. So there's definitely, it's just like a wrestler. If you know that somebody wrestled, they were a really good wrestler in high school or college, and you know a lot about them. You know a lot about their work ethic. That they probably mean what they say and say what they mean a lot of times, because they're putting it out there. So I would say that, in terms of, um, building the person, there is no contention. I mean, I still had aspects of my life, and I think any jujitsu instructor, if they were honest, no matter how successful you are on the mats, there's areas of your life that are not so clean. There's areas of your life that are messy. There's flaws that need to be fixed, sometimes big flaws. So none of us is perfect, but we're better than we would otherwise be. So nobody should think that. I mean, look, I know jujitsu black belts, multiple, that have killed themselves, that have committed suicide, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like jujitsu made their. I mean, I've went to a couple of those funerals, and it's not like jujitsu made all their problems go away. They were still in some dark spaces. Ted Ade, who a lot of us admire, the great jujitsu legend, and he had his problems, right, in the favelas and with drugs and everything. His comeback is amazing, but he still had his problems. As amazing as he was, he had his issues. A lot of us still have things. I mean, I know jiu-jitsu black belts where they struggle with a lot of things. Their life's a struggle. Divorce is a struggle. They don't see their
Yeah.
kids as much as they want to, right? They're not exactly the parent they want to be. We are real people, but what we have is, I think, because look, my brother, right? My brother lives in Missouri, and his wife is stage 4 cancer,
Hmm.
and his wife, she's, the odds, stage 4 cancer is like, your odds are not that good, right? She's a trooper. She's super positive. She's got a great network system around her. I think she's going to beat it. She's going through chemo. I think she's going to win. She has a lot of the boxes you could check, like she's going to win. And he told me just the other day, he said, because life gets hard for him too. He's my similar age, and money's tight, and life gets hard for him too. But he said, he never trained jujitsu, but he always remembered something I told about jujitsu. I told him, when life gets hard, I just think of it, it's just like a jiu-jitsu practice getting hard. It's those same days where you leave the mat, it didn't go your way. It didn't go how you wanted it to go. You didn't have the results in the drilling, in the live rolls that you wanted. You didn't feel it today. You didn't have it today. You drove home and you're second guessing, you're beating yourself up, and you're trying to talk yourself up. Why do I do this? Why do I spend so much time and whatever?
Yeah.
And going all the way to completion lets me know the same way that happened in jiu-jitsu, that can happen in other areas of my life. How do I know? I proved it in jiu-jitsu. So I just
Hmm.
carry that over. Those tough days, those rough days, those I'm too tired days, those I'm not good enough days, those I should quit. I'd be better off if I use my time on something else. Those, hey, I'm going to get myself hurt. I'm going to ravage my body doing this. I'm not going to have enough energy for work, whatever. And when you go through those fires enough, you get so much confidence that you can make it through. You can make it to the other side. You can make it to the summit, because you do it. And when you do that, you have the track record there. You just say, well, what is it in jiu-jitsu? What did I do there? And how do I carry it over to here in terms of showing up, in terms of keeping the faith, keeping the conviction? How do I, because it looks dark. This other area off the mats looks really dark. It looks like I'm not going to make it. It looks like I'm running in a circle. It looks like that I'm too old. It looks like that my time is come and gone. It's past. It looks like I've lost some relationships that I really value, that whatever, I said the wrong thing, and I've blown up a relationship that was really important. What am I going to do? It doesn't seem like I can crack this code. And I felt like that so many times in jiu-jitsu. And I told my brother, who doesn't even train, and he remembers that, like, sometimes, like, wow, yeah, that journey to black belt, it goes through a lot of circuitous, rough road. And that's the thing. It doesn't guarantee, okay, you're a black belt, you're going to figure it out, you're going to get to the summit, you're going to be super confident, you're going to be bulletproof and happily ever after. It just means you got a better chance than you did before you started. You got a way better chance. And you got people around you who probably care about you, who would probably come to your funeral. who would give a damn.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's not there's jerks. There's jerks in this sport. I've had my moments. I've had teammates that I wanted to punch out. I've had teammates want to punch me out. I've had teammates I wanted to go to the parking lot, like legit. I wanted to go to the parking lot with a guy. Like, we can do that, two guys. I'm not proud of that. But guess what? There's a lot more restraint in me and discipline in me. There were a lot of situations I was able to avoid that I had the power of restraint. And the jiu-jitsu, the discipline of jiu-jitsu gave me that power to walk away or to say it's not going to be worth it. Because the thing is, the people that a lot of times that scare the easiest, they're the people that can't fight and their ego's too big and they can't take losing. They're the people back in Baltimore that shoot you the quickest, not the toughest guys. Toughest guys don't shoot you the quickest. The coward will shoot you the quickest, man. So me not becoming a coward helped me. Not being a coward helped me, like, hey, let's make smart decisions. Let's value people. Let's avoid situations. When you're a coward, sometimes guess what you do? You escalate stuff. You escalate it. Maybe you've got a knife, a gun, a baseball bat, whatever, waiting for the guy, but you're going to handle it through cowardice means. So anyway, jiu-jitsu, I've said it, and I said it in the TEDx talk. When it comes to people building, you've got some spiritual stuff, meditation, whatever. You've got parenting and mentoring and coaching. And then I would say number 3 in that class, you've got something like a jiu-jitsu. Most people didn't hit the great parenting jackpot. So they ain't getting that one. Most people didn't hit the mentor jackpot either. So they ain't getting that one. Most people spiritually are lost. So they don't have that one. Give them something. And to me, in that next echelon, it's jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu can take a broken person and it can make them more whole. It can make them fit more pieces together. And if they never crack the code, they're way better off. Anyway, I'm going in a circle, but yes, 100%. Jiu-jitsu is an amazing art. And if almost everybody trained it, the world would be 10 times cooler than it is. Probably 50 times cooler than it is.
Well, I'd like to see Andrew Yang and where he goes with it. I think we may have a chance with a broader platform coming with him. But I wanted to thank you today for your time and flexibility and letting me pivot the conversation into a direction. I appreciate your patience with me to do that, and you delivered masterfully on the topic. So I appreciate you letting me go out there and try to work through how to express myself, today. And this was not easy. One of the purposes of this podcast is to, for me personally, is to help improve that articulation and, in ways. And so you're kind of coaching me through that too. And I appreciate that. I wanted to express in a way how jiu-jitsu and its code, how it's actually, there's a paradox there of it. It's actually safer for people to come to.
In the regular world, you could sit behind your keyboard and talk smack about people and insult people. You can do that, right? That's the regular world. The regular world gives you a lot of keyboard warriors, mean things, insulting things. They never have to face anybody. Our world is the complete opposite of that. You ain't sitting behind a keyboard. You're in the trenches. If you do something knuckleheaded, you are going to be checked on it. And that's beautiful. So guess what? We're the complete opposite of social media, mean stuff, and keyboard warriors in general. We own it. We're face to face, and we humanize each other. We're humanized. We're bonded. Our journeys are tied together, right? We're both. I'm making you better because I need to get better, and the better I can make you, the better I get, right? I need you to be a better training partner. I need you to stop start stopping that choke, start preventing, start defending that choke so that I have to go to another one. I need you. I need you badly. So, it's not just this whole us them thing that we see online, and us them, and they're the bad people, and keyboard warriors, and their basements and anonymous. And this is face to face. You got it. You reap what you sow. Instant karma. And I need to make, if I'm smart, I need to make you better, man. I want you to give me tougher roles. I want to make you better. You're going to make me better. So we're in this together. There's this whole us them thing is foolish. And that's what, if society ever catches up to that truth, we realize we're all 330 million of us together are making this world. 330 million of us. We need to all up our game. We're all in this together, and we all contribute to the vibe of the country, to the health and the vibrance of the country, or lack thereof. We all do. We need to look out for each other. We can't just have small little cliques. We gotta raise up 330 million. That's the energy. The energy of a country is the combined energy of 330 million people. Anyway, everybody out there watching, happy Sunday. Noah, it's been a pleasure. I want to get out here, get a little more done, get in the snow a little bit.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah,
well, Everyman BJJ, we're here for you. 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern, and so I'll see you next weekend. That's right, Sundays. Sometimes during the middle of the week too. Take care.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.